Hello and welcome back. Today we're going over the third and final section of the preface of A Course in Miracles. It is titled What It Says. And just as a reminder, the first two sections of the preface were written by Helen Schucman, but this third section was actually dictated by the voice. So just keep that in mind. All right, what it says. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Can I just read that one more time? Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. How peaceful to know that if God made it and it's real, then it can't be threatened. I love it. This is how A Course in Miracles begins. It makes a fundamental distinction between the real and the unreal, between knowledge and perception. Knowledge is truth, under one law, the law of love or God. Truth is unalterable, eternal, and unambiguous. It can be unrecognized, but it cannot be changed. It applies to everything that God created, and only what He created is real. It is beyond learning because it is beyond time and process. It has no opposite, no beginning and no end. It merely is. The world of perception, on the other hand, is the world of time, of change, of beginnings and endings. It is based on interpretation, not on facts. It is the world of birth and death, founded on the belief in scarcity, loss, separation, and death. It is learned rather than given, selective in its perceptual emphases, unstable in its functioning, and inaccurate in its interpretations. So I just want to talk here real quick. I know some people personally who have been very traumatized by this idea of truth. This truth that is unalterable, eternal, unambiguous, cannot be changed, because that idea of truth has been used to abuse. And there are a lot of people and organizations, religious, political, all sorts of organizations, social, that take a lowercase t truth and believe that it's a capital T truth and refuse to change, they think that their lowercase t truth is unalterable, eternal, unambiguous, and then try to coerce people into changing to follow that truth. But it was never a capital T truth to begin with. And so I know that there are people who have been traumatized and who have been manipulated and abused using this kind of idea of truth, and who may be very resistant to this idea of truth because of that. And I just want to point out a couple things that I find interesting. And again, this is just my opinion, and I'm open to other perspectives. But something that's interesting in this description of truth is it has no opposite, no beginning and no end. It merely is. And the world of perception, on the other hand, is a world of time, of change, of beginnings and endings. It's based on interpretation, not on facts. It is the world of birth and death, founded on the belief in scarcity, loss, separation, and death. It is learned rather than given. Selective in its perceptual emphases, unstable in its functioning, and inaccurate in its interpretations. So we have these two worlds, this knowledge and truth, and then perception and not truth. And I just think it's interesting that capital T truth has no opposite. And I don't know that I've ever been taught anything in this world that didn't have an opposite. That didn't have an opposite. And so something I love about this course is that it opens up your mind a little bit to maybe what real capital T truth is. And I think a lot of the things that we think are capital T truth aren't actually. Because what I understand of a capital T truth, like it says in that very first thing I read, nothing real can be threatened. Nothing real can be threatened. And how many people do you know who will violently defend what they believe is truth? If it's actually truth, it doesn't need defense because nothing can actually threaten it. So anything that we feel like we need to defend, maybe we need to look at whether or not that is actually truth. If we need to protect it, if we need to, you know, I don't have another word, defend and protect. Maybe it either isn't capital T truth or we are not living it the way we are supposed to be living it. So keep those two options in mind. From knowledge and perception, respectively, two distinct thought systems arise, which are opposite in every respect. In the realm of knowledge, no thoughts exist apart from God, because God and his creation share one will, and will is capitalized. The world of perception, however, is made by the belief in opposites and separate wills, in perpetual conflict with each other and with God. What perception sees and hears appears to be real because it permits into awareness only what conforms to the wishes of the perceiver. I think in psychology terms that's called confirmation bias, where you only see what you want to see. You see evidence that supports whatever you want supported. This leads to a world of illusions, a world which needs constant defense precisely because it is not real. Because remember, nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. So it's a world of illusions. None of it actually exists. All this world we've created where we see what we want to see. When you have been caught in the world of perception, you are caught in a dream. You cannot escape without help, because everything your senses show merely witnesses to the reality of the dream. God has provided the answer, and answer is capitalized, the only way out, way with a capital W, the true helper with a capital H. It is the function of his voice, his Holy Spirit, to mediate between the two worlds. He can do this because while on the one hand he knows the truth, on the other he also recognizes our illusions, but without believing in them. It is the Holy Spirit's goal to help us escape from the dream world by teaching us how to reverse our thinking and unlearn our mistakes. Forgiveness is the Holy Spirit's great learning aid in bringing this thought reversal about. However, the Course has its own definition of what forgiveness really is, just as it defines the world in its own way. So don't think forgiveness here is the kind of forgiveness you've been taught. It'll explain it later. The world we see merely reflects our own internal frame of reference, the dominant ideas, wishes, and emotions in our minds. Projection makes perception. I'm going to say that again because they kind of sound the same. Projection makes perception. We look inside first, decide the kind of world we want to see, and then project that world outside, making it the truth as we see it. We make it true by our interpretations of what it is we are seeing. If we are using perception to justify our own mistakes, our anger, our impulses to attack, our lack of love in whatever form it may take, we will see a world of evil, destruction, malice, envy, and despair. All this we must learn to forgive, not because we are being quote unquote good and quote unquote charitable, but because what we are seeing is not true. I'm just going to read that one more time without the quote unquotes, okay? In case that was distracting. All this we must learn to forgive, not because we are being good and charitable, but because what we are seeing is not true. We have distorted the world by our twisted defenses and are therefore seeing what is not there. As we learn to recognize our perceptual errors, we also learn to look past them or forgive. At the same time, we are forgiving others, looking past our distorted self concepts to the capital S self that God created in us and as us. So, as we learn to recognize our perceptual errors, we also learn to look past them or forgive them. At the same time, we are forgiving ourselves, looking past our distorted self concepts to the self that God created in us and as us. So, forgiving is really just looking past our own errors, our own illusions, our own misperceptions of how we think the world is or how we see the world. This is one of my favorite parts, so listen to this. Sin is defined as lack of love. Since love is all there is, sin in the sight of the Holy Spirit is a mistake to be corrected rather than an evil to be punished. Our sense of inadequacy, weakness, and incompletion comes from the strong investment in the scarcity principle that governs the whole world of illusions. From that point of view, we seek in others what we feel is wanting in ourselves. We quote unquote love another in order to get something ourselves. That, in fact, is what passes for love in the dream world. There can be no greater mistake than that, for love is incapable of asking for anything. Have any of you heard, maybe you've been told this, if you really loved me, you would do this for me, or you would let me do this thing, or whatever, right? If you really loved me. But I love this. There can be no greater mistake than that, for love is incapable of asking for anything. True love, right? It'll explain that more later, so I'm not going to dive into it now. Only minds can really join, and whom God has joined, no man can put asunder. So it's our minds, not our bodies, that join. It is, however, only at the level of Christ mind that true union is possible, and has, in fact, never been lost. Let me read that again. It is, however, only at the level of Christ mind, and both of those are capitalized, Christ and mind, that true union is possible and has, in fact, never been lost. Christ mind that joins us has never been lost. Think on that for a minute. The little I seeks to enhance itself by external approval, external possessions, and external quote unquote love. The capital S self that God created needs nothing. It is forever complete, safe, loved, and loving. It seeks to share rather than to get, to extend rather than project. It has no needs and wants to join with others out of their mutual awareness of abundance. It has no needs and wants to join with others out of their mutual awareness of abundance. So when you are in your Christ mind, which you've never lost, by the way, you've just forgotten it, you have no needs of any kind. You need nothing. You are forever complete, safe, loved, and loving. And you want to join with others out of a mutual awareness of abundance, not because they have something that you lack. We want to feel loved by other people because we don't believe that we're loved unless we think someone special loves us, right? It's going to go into that next. The special relationships of the world are destructive, selfish, and childishly egocentric. Yet, if given to the Holy Spirit, these relationships can become the holiest things on earth, the miracles that point the way to return to heaven. The world uses its special relationships as a final weapon of exclusion and a demonstration of separateness. The Holy Spirit transforms them into perfect lessons in forgiveness and in awakening from the dream. Each one is an opportunity to let perceptions be healed and errors corrected. Each one is another chance to forgive oneself by forgiving the other. And each one becomes still another invitation to the Holy Spirit and to the remembrance of God. It has a whole chapter later, a few chapters in, about special relationships and how the world uses them and the ego uses them as a way to emphasize our separateness, and how, oh, I have this special person in my life, right? This significant other, and we are special to each other. And if you don't have a special significant other, it's, somehow you're not worthy or you're lacking or whatnot. And you need a special someone, a special significant other, because they fill gaps and fill in what you lack. But when you remember that Christ mind, when you return to that Christ mind, you realize that you lack nothing and you just want to join with others because they also lack nothing. It's such a beautiful. Just wait till we get to that chapter. This is going to take too long if I go down these these rabbit holes that I could go down. Okay, perception is a function of the body and therefore represents a limit on awareness. Perception sees through the body's eyes and hears through the body's ears. It evokes the limited responses which the body makes. The body appears to be largely self-motivated and independent, yet it actually responds only to the intentions of the mind. Can I just say that again? The body appears to be largely self-motivated and independent, yet it actually responds only to the intentions of the mind. If the mind wants to use it for attack in any form, it becomes prey to sickness, age, and decay. If the mind accepts the Holy Spirit's purpose for it instead, it becomes a useful way of communicating with others, invulnerable as long as it is needed, and to be gently laid by when its use is over. Of itself, it is neutral, as is everything in the world of perception. Whether it is used for the goals of the ego or the Holy Spirit depends entirely on what the mind wants. The opposite of seeing through the body's eyes is the vision of Christ, which reflects strength rather than weakness, unity rather than separation, and love rather than fear. The opposite of hearing through the body's ears is communication through the voice for God. And the V is capitalized in that, voice for God. The Holy Spirit, which abides in each of us. His, capital V, voice seems distant and difficult to hear because the ego, which speaks for the little separated self, seems to be much louder. This is actually reversed. The Holy Spirit speaks with unmistakable clarity and overwhelming appeal. No one who does not choose to identify with the body could possibly be deaf to his messages of release and hope, nor could he fail to accept joyously the vision of Christ in glad exchange for his miserable picture of himself. The miserable picture of himself. It's so interesting to me that the Holy Spirit speaks with unmistakable clarity and overwhelming appeal. No one who does not choose to identify with the body could possibly be deaf to the Spirit's messages of relief and release and hope. Nor could he fail to accept joyously the vision of Christ in glad exchange for his miserable picture of himself. Which means basically all of us are choosing to identify with the body rather than with the Spirit, which is kind of sad. And one thing that I love about A Course in Miracles is because it it teaches us how to begin to identify, release that body identification and identify with the spirit instead. So again, I hope you stick around because it only gets better. Christ's vision is the Holy Spirit's gift, God's alternative to the illusion of separation and to the belief in the reality of sin, guilt, and death. It is the one correction for all errors of perception. So Christ's vision is the one correction for all errors of perception, the reconciliation of the seeming opposites on which this world is based. Its kindly light shows all things from another point of view, reflecting the thought system that arises from knowledge and making return to God not only possible, but inevitable. Its kindly light shows all things from another point of view, reflecting the thought system that arises from knowledge and making return to God not only possible, but inevitable. So if the thought system is based on actual knowledge and not on perception, the return to God is not only possible, but inevitable. What was regarded as injustices done to one by someone else now becomes a call for help and for union. Sin, sickness, and attack are seen as misperceptions calling for remedy through gentleness and love. Defenses are laid down because where there is no attack, there is no need for them. Our brothers' needs become our own because they are taking the journey with us as we go to God. Without us, they would lose their way. Without them, we could never find our own. Our brothers' needs become our own. I'm just reading this again. Because they are taking the journey with us as we go to God. Without us, they would lose their way. Without them, we could never find our own. Again, no one is healed alone. We talked about that in the first video. Forgiveness is unknown in heaven, where the need for it would be inconceivable. However, in this world, forgiveness is a necessary correction for all the mistakes that we have made. To offer forgiveness is the only way for us to have it, for it reflects the law of heaven, that giving and receiving are the same. Heaven is the natural state of all the sons of God as He created them. Such is their reality forever. It has not changed because it has been forgotten. Okay, can we just go over that one more time? So first of all, we offer forgiveness in order to have it because it is a law of heaven that giving and receiving are the same. So if you don't give forgiveness, you're not going to receive forgiveness. So that's interesting to me. Heaven is the natural state of all the sons of God. Such is their reality forever. Forever. It has not changed because it has been forgotten. So just because we've forgotten heaven and are not acting like we would in heaven, it is still technically our reality, even though we are not recognizing it. We've forgotten it and we don't see it. It is still our reality, and it hasn't changed just because we've forgotten it. We're not that powerful to change something God created. All right, here's where it describes forgiveness, and this is the last paragraph of this section, and it is so beautiful. I might read it twice. Forgiveness is the means by which we will remember, right? So our reality is heaven. It has not changed because it has been forgotten. And then this line, forgiveness is the means by which we will remember. Through forgiveness, the thinking of the world is reversed. The forgiven world becomes the gate of heaven, because by its mercy, we can at last forgive ourselves. The forgiven world becomes the gate of heaven, because by its mercy, we can at last forgive ourselves. So when we forgive the world, that basically is the gateway to heaven. Because if the law of heaven is that what we give is what we receive, when we finally forgive the world, we have finally fully forgiven ourselves. And that is the mercy that lets us into heaven, the gate of heaven. Holding no one prisoner to guilt, we become free. Acknowledging Christ in all our brothers, we recognize his presence in ourselves. Forgetting all our misperceptions and with nothing from the past to hold us back, we can remember God. Beyond this, learning cannot go. When we are ready, God himself will take the final step in our return to him. Holding no one prisoner to guilt, we become free. Acknowledging Christ in all our brothers, we recognize his presence in ourselves. And this part, beyond this, learning cannot go. If you remember in the beginning, the beginning of this section, let's see if I can find it. So truth, right? Knowledge is truth under one law, or the law of God. It is beyond learning because it is beyond time and process. So knowledge is something that you are given. It's not something that you learn piecemeal. It said of the world of perception, it is learned rather than given. So that's why it says beyond this learning cannot go. So once you've gotten to this point where you've forgiven the world, that's where learning ends. And that's where then we can finally receive truth and knowledge in its fullness. And that will be given to us by God himself taking that final step and giving us that knowledge and that full capital T truth. Because it's not something that can be learned because it's beyond time and beyond those incremental steps. So not saying that we can't, I don't think that it's saying that we can't have any knowledge now. But I think the knowledge we seek is so beyond this world that we actually have a lot less of it than we think we do. Which is why that internal teacher is so important, right? To help guide us in those incremental steps so we can get to that point where we are ready to receive it in its fullness, which is the only way all knowledge and truth can be received. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. I enjoyed it. I love so much like reviewing and going over all of this and feeling like I'm sharing it with somebody else. I love it so much. So next time we get into the actual course. So that was all the preface. And next time we will jump into the introduction and we'll be off.